But today I'd like to focus on a group of proposals which would restrict trapping on or near trails. These proposals were submitted due to a perceived threat to dogs. We certainly recognize that there is a problem that occasionally occurs. It's a two-sided problem, but to date, all of the proposed solutions have been one-sided. In other words, asking or demanding that trappers give something up. Similar proposals have been submitted over the past decade, and oftentimes two organizations, that is mine and the Alaska Wildlife Alliance, have been on opposite sides of this issue. And representatives from both organizations have left previous game board meetings frustrated by the process. So last summer, I contacted the executive director of the Wildlife Alliance and asked if she would be interested in meeting to determine if there was any common ground on this issue. She agreed, and we met and came up with an agreement to work together. And we would work together on a sign project, which I believe you folks received a copy of a sign that we had drafted in the past. It has two messages. One is advising trappers not to set traps or snares in areas of potential conflict. The other message is to dog owners to keep their dogs under control, and that the dog's safety is their responsibility. We would also work together on what we refer to as shared trails workshops. These are workshops that we developed nearly 25 years ago, where we work with non-trappers primarily to educate them on what a trap line looks like, how traps operate, how to avoid problems, those sorts of things. And Ms. Schmidt with the Wildlife Alliance agreed that we could co-sponsor some of those workshops. And our progress to date hasn't been as good as either of us had hoped, but we have worked together on those workshops this current winter and plan to do more in the coming years. For the past 8 to 10 years, one of our members by the name of Tom Lassard out of Cooper Landing has been posting these advisory signs or something very similar to them in the area around Cooper Landing. And Brad Christensen, who is the president of our South Central chapter, has done the same in the South Central area of Anchorage and the Mat-Su Valley. And they both confirmed to me just again yesterday that, to our knowledge, there have been no dogs caught on any of the trails where those signs have been posted. To me, that's a pretty powerful message that the sign project works both towards advising both groups, that is, the trappers and the dog owners. And once again, I'll emphasize that the signs contain messages for both groups. So my main message to you today is that two groups which have been at odds on this issue for a long time have agreed to work together. We understand, and you should too, that the two organizations may still disagree on a variety of issues. However, we're going to put those issues aside, or those differences aside, and work towards success on the dogs and traps issue. With all of that in mind, we ask that you do not pass the suite of proposals in front of you this year which would restrict trapping on or near trails, and give us some time to see if this joint effort by the two organizations will work. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
My name is Sylvie Montalvo. My family has owned a house on East Quartz Creek Road in Cooper Landing for 49 years. Over that time period, I have noticed a decline in seeing large animals in the winter. My parents, who originally bought the place, used to see wolves crossing the lake, hear coyotes yipping at night. Now we're lucky maybe to see an ermine or a hare. While Wild Lake has disappeared from this area, more people are coming to Cooper Landing in the winter for recreation. The beach in front of our lake house and the roads on Quartz Creek area are used a lot by families and dogs to walk for fat tire biking, cross-country skiing, snow machining. The Quartz Creek campground near where our lake house is used a lot because it has early frozen part of the lake for ice skating, for ice boat sailing, for snow machining, and again for walking and cross-country skiing. There's not camping going on at that time, but there's a lot of local use of our campgrounds in Cooper Landing. The trails in Cooper Landing area are used a lot in the winter for cross-country skiing and snow machining by families with their dogs. My family and I have enjoyed walking and cross-country skiing on the beach in front of our lake house. It's one of the great joys in winter to just be able to walk out of my house, walk down to the beach with my dog, and walk along the shoreline. Recently, however, with some of the incidents where dogs have been caught in traps near the Kenai Lake area, and a friend having seen a trap set right by Turn Lake when their dog was attracted to some meat that was hanging over it, I've become very concerned about these maybe ill-placed and unmarked traps that they may catch another dog, especially a child. With the amount of areas in Alaska where remote trapping is possible, I'm very opposed to traps having to be set near these well-used winter recreation areas like trails and beaches and campgrounds, and even highway pullouts near Cooper Landing and Summit Lake. In my opinion, and this is my opinion, trapping can't be very successful in an area where there's a decline in animals. It can't really be very profitable when there's a lack of interest in wearing fur and a lack of animals. One trapper mentioned in the Kenai Peninsula there's no way to even make a living by trapping these days. In my opinion, again, these are my thoughts, trapping today can't be very successful in areas that are so close to human activity, especially within 100 yards of people that are talking and laughing and running and snow machines. These human sounds and these human smells can't be a place where there would be animals that are being trapped. Times have changed. This is not a remote backcountry area around Cooper Landing. This area that has been chosen for trap setbacks is a very actively used area in the winter by a lot of people. It is time that a community like Cooper Landing, where there is overwhelming support for trap setbacks, as was evidenced by a recent survey, be able to reach a compromise with trappers to at least establish a 100-yard buffer by its well-used winter recreation areas. It can't take very long for a snow machine that a trapper has to cross 100 yards. And yet for a dog and a family, that would be quite a ways to have to go to a trap. We're not asking to get rid of trapping. We're not asking to stop it. All we're asking is to set up some buffers and to make a compromise. And I'm glad to hear the gentleman that just spoke saying that we're trying to reach a compromise. I'm happy to have a sign. I haven't seen the ones that you talked about that Tom has set up recently. They were there several years ago, and it was a surprise to me, having lived in the area for so long, there were even traps in the area. I was speaking with a gentleman from Homer, and he said, people come down to ski and snow skiing and stuff, they don't even realize that there's trapping going on in these areas. So that's another reason why it would be nice to define an area and say, you know, there is trapping going on on this trail, but it's going to be 100 yards back from the trail. That way we know what's going on. The trappers know where they can be. The people that are the recreational people know, oh, okay, well then we better be more careful with our children and our dogs. Compromise is what we're asking for. I ask for your concern. I appreciate these proposals 145, 149 through 154, and I thank you for listening to my testimony.
And we thank you for your testimony. Any questions from board members for Sylvie? Go ahead, Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, just a question, if the board were to adopt, maybe amend a couple of these proposals to include some safe practices, like elevated, submerged, enclosed sets within that 100-yard area, would you be okay with that? As the dogs would have no issues with them?
If that's something that, you know, dogs and children can't get into at all, I think one of the things that we were talking about too is there needs to be some education, because those of us that are concerned don't know as much about the traps. And so if there are traps that are not as much of a concern for a group of people on a trail, then that would be something we'd like to, you know, talk about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? If not, thank you very much for your testimony.
Hi, my name's Amy Broderson. I am originally from Fairbanks, but my partner and I built a home in Cooper Landing, and I have been living on the Upper Kenai Peninsula since 2014. Growing up in Fairbanks, trapping was just another way of life. I grew up around family friends who trapped. I watched them check their sets. I mushed my dog team down many a trapline trail with Martin hanging just feet away. At the ages of 8 and 9, my neighbor and I decided to set a snare line for hares to get some fur to tie fishing flies with, and we were successful. I also grew up knowing firsthand how dangerous traps can be for dogs. My own family dog was caught in a snare just behind our house one winter. He had been gone for 2 or 3 days, and we thought he might never come home. But one day, the trapper's mother called to tell us that they had found our dog, and he was returned to us alive, though he had a scar around his head for the rest of his life. I was also getting ready to take off in a ski juring race one winter down the Chena River, and a large husky dog came running past our barking dogs with a wolf snare around his neck and blood pouring down his fur. That dog was also lucky, as several of the bystanders were able to grab him, remove the snare, and take him to a vet for care. These are just a couple of the direct incidents I have been involved in regarding conflicts between dogs and traps. But there are many more when I include my friends' dogs over the past 40 years. Some where animals have survived, and others where they have unfortunately not. As a kid growing up in Fairbanks, I feel like dog owners were much more aware of trapping during the winter. And I feel that we were much more cautious about letting our dogs run loose unchecked down certain trails. Our parents educated us about what to look for to tell if we were on a trap line. We were taught how to set a trap and how they opened and closed. In general, I feel we were much more aware of our surroundings than kids are today. Today, the population is growing rapidly around our state, as more people want to exit large cities in the lower 48 and others are immigrating from overseas. With this increase in population, more people are adventuring outdoors to enjoy a myriad of recreational interests, many of which involve bringing their dogs and children with them. But many of the people that are moving here today do not necessarily have the same education about recreating in the wilderness that I did growing up. Last winter, my partner and our dog were getting ready to ski up the side of a mountain in the Summit Lake recreational area. It was an up track set early in the winter by skiers and is commonly used to gain the upper ridge. As he began his tour, another party was coming down, and they told him not to take our dog, as they had seen several traps along the skin track. My partner immediately turned around and headed up a different trail to avoid the traps. Unfortunately, I feel like this sort of thing is going to become more common as trappers are pushed out of more populated areas, or as new trappers venture down the road thinking that Cooper Landing is open wilderness, but do not know our community's land uses and ethics. So what are the solutions here? How can we all get along? How do we minimize the fear and possibility of our dog or child getting caught in a trap while encouraging people to get outside and appreciate the state that they have chosen to move to and live in? All while being respectful of those who want to learn how to trap, keep the tradition of trapping alive, who enjoy the connection with nature, who still harvest fur for an income, or who trap because it gives them purpose. Our state is very large, and there are thousands of acres available for recreation and trapping. I do not want to take away rural Alaska's way of life. I do not want to harm a person's lawful form of recreation. Instead, I feel we need to put some parameters in place in highly used recreational areas so that trapping does not get a bad name from those who do not follow the trapper's code of ethics or are not well educated about the importance of trapping in our state. We already designate certain trail systems in highly used recreational areas for motorized or non-motorized traffic, cross-country skiing, single-track biking, or multi-use. However, we do not designate safe buffers for trapping. To help minimize conflicts between trappers and other user groups, I feel it is very reasonable to ask for 100-yard trapping setbacks from well-used, multi-use trails and backcountry access points. By reducing conflicts between trappers and other users, we help perpetuate traditional activities that bring meaning and joy to others. We develop a more respectful outdoor community, we can reduce fears, and we can increase safety. Please consider proposals 149 through 153, asking for 100-yard setbacks from highly used multi-use trails and backcountry access points, as well as proposal 154, which asks for signs to designate active trap lines around the Cooper Landing area. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Would you stay for a second so if any of the board members have questions? Are there questions from board members? Stosh?
Yeah, thank you, Amy. Thank you for your testimony. Just a quick question from my notes. You mentioned setbacks for well-used trails. How would you define well-used trails?
I mean, we haven't done studies on how many people are accessing our trails, but in just since 2014 that I've been in the Cooper Landing area, more people are coming down to recreate, especially during this pandemic. The pullouts were just packed with people on the weekends, which is not something we were normally seeing. So, we're just getting more use, and there's a bypass going around Cooper Landing now that is going to bring more people down, and also they're opening up another tract of land very close to Cooper Landing, lot 395, that they want to develop cross-country ski trails. They want to bring in more biking. They want to auction off land for people to live in these recreational areas, and so we're going to see a lot of growth in the next few years, and sorry.
Yeah, thank you. But how would you determine what's the difference between how would you determine a well-used trail versus because you said well-used trails is what you're...
Well-used, the trails around town we see lots of people out on them, snow machining and running and biking. I don't know how to, I guess we could put up, I don't know how you would, unless you did a study, like they do for roads. I don't.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
First off, I'd like to thank the trapper from Homer for doing voluntary setbacks and supporting at least one of the setback proposals from Homer. I'm a 35-year Alaska resident, typically splitting the time between Denali, Anchorage, and Homer. There are times I've wintered in Homer, usually cross-country ski to lookout ski area trails 3 or 4 times a week. These are trails that are extensively used by local students from various schools and also host ski races. There are also a number of other ski trails in the Homer area as well. And I wish to express my support for the following trapping setback proposals. Proposal 145, quarter-mile hunting trapping buffers from the mouths of the new highway wildlife crossings on the upcoming Cooper Landing bypass. These wildlife overpasses tunnels are being created specifically for the safety of both motorists and to provide safe crossings for wildlife. They are not being created for unethical trappers to kill wildlife using overpasses and tunnels. Proposals 146 through 154 are 100-yard setbacks from hiking and multiple-use trails, campgrounds, pullouts, parking areas, Kenai Lake Beach, and Summit Lake recreational areas, and require signage where active trapping is occurring. All of these are common sense, practical proposals that are meant to avoid conflicts with other recreational users and their dogs, and further to prevent the targeting and trapping of wildlife that is attempting to safely cross the Sterling Highway using wildlife overpasses and tunnels. No dog owner should be so fearful about the safety of their dog while taking it out on a walk, snowshoe, ski, dog mushing, or skiing trip where they may encounter traps or snares on or close to hiking, multiple-use trails, parking lots, pullouts, campgrounds, residential areas, and schools. Nor should they have to deal with the trauma of trying to save the life of their dog while recreating on such a trail. For many people, they consider the dogs to be family members and feel they should be able to safely recreate with the dogs without fear of the dogs being injured or killed by traps and snares. For every dog that is injured or killed by trappers, it creates anger and opposition to trapping. I highly doubt that dog owners who have had their dogs injured, strangled, or killed by trappers are going to care about maintaining any type of trapping tradition. In my own case, I wish to get a future German Shepherd and be able to hike, camp, cross-country ski, and mountain bike with her without being paranoid about her being injured or killed in a trap or snare. And this would apply whether I'm in Homer, Denali, or anywhere else in the state. This is further enraging when trappers are not required to sign their trap lines, identify the contact information of traps, or are required to check them in a timely manner and are allowed to monopolize multi-user trails to the exclusion of all other recreational users. No other form of recreation in Alaska enjoys such an extreme monopoly for roughly 3,000 plus trappers versus over 730,000 Alaskan residents. This doesn't build public support for maintaining a culture of death tradition that excludes and takes priority over all other uses. It has further come to my attention that the board has not authorized trapping setbacks for multiple-use trails anywhere in Alaska since the 1990s, early 2000s. Such attitudes and policy decisions feed an ever-growing wave of opposition to trapping, and eventually an opposition that will not be content with strict and needed regulations, but one that wishes to see trapping banned throughout the state. If it comes to a choice between maintaining the culture of that tradition for a tiny minority or protecting one's dogs for the majority, it is an easy choice in putting the protection of communities and dogs first. If there are trappers here who are opposed to these common sense proposals and has given oral testimony, please give specific reasons why you oppose these setbacks and why you should be allowed to possibly continue to injure and kill pet dogs, and do so without warning and identification signs to the public. Wanton killing of man's and women's best friends should never be tolerated. It only creates opposition momentum in creating and working towards a trap-free Alaska. I ask you to consider and approve each of these proposals for the benefit of each of these communities and return common sense ethics and regulations to trapping. And thank you for this opportunity to allow me to testify.
Questions from board members? Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Jeremy, for, oh, that was a foggy egg, I'm sorry, I'm behind here. Are there any regulations or ordinances that are out there that protect pets?
Are there any regulations or ordinances that protect pets? Well, why should trapping monopolize these various trails?
I just...
In other words, how is a 100-yard setback such a huge, overwhelming inconvenience for trappers? It's only 100 yards. It's the length of a football field. We're not asking that much, you know. And certainly, dog owners have a responsibility, either one, to keep them leashed, or two, to have those dogs trained and under verbal control. You know, so their responsibility definitely goes both ways. You know, obviously, if a dog is loose, it's not under verbal control, it goes beyond 100 yards, yes, it could possibly be exposed to trapping, you know, with the setbacks. So I fully acknowledge that. But this is a growing issue. You know, it was an issue with Matsu last year. It's certainly an issue down here in the Cooper Landing area. It's going to be a growing issue, as other folks have testified, in regards to increasing forms of recreation that are taking place in the Cooper Landing area, Homer, and other locations in the state. It's not going to go away. It's only going to increase. So I would say be proactive. Let's deal with it in a proactive way, as opposed to building opposition.
Thank you. So, thank you for your testimony.
Yeah, thank you all for the opportunity.